Ladies and gentlemen, we've got a fantastic guest on the Kurz Wind Podcast, episode 15. Today, we have from Gearbox Express, the VP of Operations, John McKay, who graciously accepted an invite to come on to the Kurz Wind Podcast, again, episode 15. Quick background on Gearbox Express. I think there's about 3 people in total in the entire industry who's not heard of Gearbox Express. And honestly, that number might be a little bit higher than I've just stated. Lower, pardon me. Gearbox Express, quick intro, is the only independent company in North America solely focused on providing down tower wind gearbox remanufacturing solutions. They've actually recently moved into a new 80,000 square foot facility in Mequonico, Wisconsin's new industrial park, where they focus strictly on gearboxes and they know how to keep them running. Quick backstory, I have been able to go to the facility in Wisconsin. It is incredible, and I'd be willing to eat my breakfast off the floor in there every time that I go visit. So first of all, John, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. We really appreciate you being a guest.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Dan. Appreciate it.
John, I want to hop right into it actually here and talk about you and your background. We'll talk about Gearbox Express here in a little bit. But first, could you walk us through how John McKay, I'm sure you played football growing up, junior high, middle school, high school. How did someone like you with your growing up background, how did you end up in the wind industry in the first place?
Yeah, I get that a lot, right? How'd you end up here? It was one of those things. I was in the military and wasn't even looking at renewables as a thing. Growing up, you have, there might be one wind turbine somewhere in the middle of nowhere and nobody knows about it and they call it a windmill or whatever it is. But nobody really knows how to get into it. And then solar was kind of all over the place, but again, nobody really knows how. It's this thing that just kind of exists, but there's no real substance or context to it. I was getting out of the military and I was a part of a Wounded Warrior program, and they had this email group, for guys getting out. They wanted people to submit their resumes to this this job generator kind of thing, right? So I had my name, my email in this group, and I get an email from a guy named Dave Grant, who was the director of operations, remote operations for BP Wind out of Houston. And so I get this email come across, and it's him, and he's looking for guys, to come out of the military to work in the 24/7 in the operations center in Houston. And I'm thinking, I got this email direct. I'm like, I don't even know who this guy is. I don't even know what this is. And I think, in my mind, I'm thinking, well, he's asking me to come work for him. I'm a naive guy, never really been in a civilian workforce, been in the military my whole career, my whole life, basically. And so I respond back to him like, yeah, I'm your guy. I'm your guy. I sell myself, man. I'm the bee's knees, man.
Nice.
And, so he emails me back and he's like, let's set something up. So I'm living in Virginia at the time. We set something up. I fly down to Houston, do my job interview, and come to find out something happened and I got the email. Apparently his email didn't make it to the right people, and I'm totally okay with that. So how I got in the wind, man. That was my first gig, was a 24/7 operator working for BP out of Houston. We had just a few sites at the time. We had Edom Hill, we had Silver Star. Those are Clipper sites. And then we had Fowler Ridge coming on in Indiana, and we had Flat Ridge in Kansas. And then we brought on a bunch of different wind farms over the time that I was there. But that was my first gig. That's how I got into wind, on an accident email. That's how I got into it, man. It was awesome. I was like Googling, what is SCADA? Yeah, I totally know what that is. I had no idea.
No way. So the way that you got into wind was an email misdirected to you. You picked up your stuff in Virginia.
Yep.
You went to BP in Houston.
Yep.
And sold yourself in the interview process with no background in renewables and got the job.
Not a drop. I mean, I had power generation. I understand power generation from my time in the military. So the technical side of like how, what's happening, I understood all that, so technically I was there. But in terms of like renewables, wind turbine, all that stuff, complete foreign language. But but I was willing to learn. And I had 4 children. I was getting retired from the military and had, basically no plan. I didn't know what to expect. A lot of, my time in the military ending was fairly abrupt. And so I had no real plan and I was in scramble mode, right? So you're willing to do whatever it takes, to provide for your family. And I'm so grateful that Dave's email landed in my inbox and I responded, right? And everything else from there is on you, right? You got to go out there and you got to sell yourself and land the job. And then, the biggest part, now you got to perform it, right? So
yeah, no pressure.
Well, right. But they did a great job, man. That I will forever be indebted and grateful to the BP Wind team. All the guys that are still there, and all the guys that have come and gone and worked for other companies now. I stay in touch with those guys. I'm super grateful for the opportunity and the experience that I gained while I was there. I mean, they really set me up for success, and helped me and allowed me to grow my skill set and my love for the industry.
That's first of all, thank you so much for your military service. I do want to point that out. And I think it's crazy how you ended up at BP, and you're also, it sounds like, maybe dealing with Clipper turbines, which are pretty unique in the way that they were designed and built. And now you own a Gearbox remanufacturing facility. I'd like to, and this is a little bit of a curveball, have you discussed the Clipper setup? How were Clippers different from your stock, let's say GE 1X or 2X turbine that you see out in the field today?
Yeah, so I mean, right out of the gate, Clippers have 4 high-speed shafts, so instant difference, right? Standard from day one in wind until, let's bypass Clipper, until today. There's 1 gearbox and there's 1 generator. Clipper said, "Hold my beer. We're gonna put generators on 1 gearbox." And it is what it is. We're set up. We're set up to do Clipper gearboxes. Actually, as a matter of fact, our facility, this facility that we're currently in, was built around the concept of Clipper gearboxes and gearboxes that are of the same size as Clipper, right? So the Mitsubishi 2.4, some of the ICOF stuff that in the Synvion MM92, Nordex, the big Vestas units, the big Atlas gearboxes and such. We can handle all that stuff here. So we had Clipper in mind, when we initially built this stuff, and built and spec'd out our shop, 60-ton cranes. So in terms of material movement and handling, we're more than capable of doing it. That's why we did it. But the difference in Clipper, they really went out on a limb there in their engineering. I'm not sure what they were after, but they achieved it. I mean, they got it. There's several Clippers out there that are chugging away. I wouldn't have done it that way, but hey, they did it, and they made it happen. And there's still some Clippers in operation today. So
there are. As a matter of fact, I was looking at a few sites this morning, including your Fowler Ridge BP shout out that you gave earlier. They are unique machines. I've had some conversations with people in the industry, like Steven Steen from Poseidon, who I think and he actually worked at Clipper. And the design concept was unique. And I think it takes some of these manufacturers to go out on a limb and try new things as we continue to press the industry forward. So while it didn't necessarily pan out long-term for Clipper, I do like the concept of continuously innovating and rethinking the way that you actually approach wind as a whole.
Yeah, you have to get outside of your box, man. You have to, if you want to grow anything and you have passion about growth and you have passion for continuous improvement and stuff like that, you have to think outside the box. Everybody can make a gearbox and a generator. Anybody can do that. The footprint is there. It doesn't take much to figure that out, right? How do you make it better, right? So you're going to make mistakes. If you say you're not, then you're not trying hard enough, right? If there's not a failure somewhere along the line, you're not putting your best foot forward. So, I mean, kudos to those guys, to that whole team. They did something. They did make it work. It's not the best, but it's something, right? So who knows what's going to come out of this, right? I'm sure there's somebody right now, storyboard and putting stuff together for the next, for the next best thing. And it's a result of stuff like that. Those guys who threw it on the line and said, this is what we're going to do. A lot of people can sit back and talk trash about it, but they did it. They did it. And kudos to them. And, it's an evolution, right? That's that's something new that nobody's ever seen before.
Oh, I would agree 100%. And when I think of innovation and pressing the industry forward, I have to give you guys a shout out at Gearbox Express. I want to hear a little bit more about your origin story. So you had mentioned anybody can design a gearbox or a generator, but there is a lot of nuance and thought and storyboarding that goes into it. Could you talk to me about how Gearbox Express was originated? What was the original goal? What was the need that you saw in the industry at the time of the genesis story, I guess, of Gearbox Express?
Yeah. So, I mean, so there was three guys that started the company, right? And basically the idea behind starting the company was that there has to be something better for the industry, right? Wind is a new industry, right? We're still pretty much in our infancy, right? We're still seeing some of the, first megawatt class turbines are still in operation, are still being worked on. There's if you go to Palm Springs, California, you can see stuff from the 80s. That's first generation stuff that's still running, right? So the guys that started the company knew that there had to be something better out there. And by and large, the OEMs, there was no competition there. There was no reason to get better, right? They said, this is the line that we're going to set, and there's no competition. So why push yourself to do anything else, right? Well, that's great in the beginning, but we're not in the beginning anymore. Yeah, we're still a young industry, but we're not in the beginning. So in 2010, when they were getting this stuff together, the wind industry was rolling, right? And customers were just getting taken advantage of. Like wind farm owners and operators just get taken advantage. You don't have an option. You have to come back to me every time. You're captive, right? And they knew that, and so they basically said, we're going to figure out an option, for that customer, for that wind farm owner operator to go to, in the event that you want change, you want something different, right? Things break, period. It happens. They're mechanical, they're electrical, they're going to break, and it's going to break whenever it wants to. And I don't care what your degree says, it's going to break whenever it wants to, right? And so because of that, these guys said, we're going to figure out how it breaks and why it breaks, and we're going to fix that. That's what we're going to fix. We're not just going to fix, we're not going to repair it. We're not going to put a Band-Aid on it and send it back out to you. Anybody can do that. Like I said earlier, right? Anybody can make a repair, take it apart, put it back together again. Can you do it better than it was? That's the key, right? That's the secret sauce. Can you do it better than it was and warranty it and stand behind your work, stand behind your workmanship, stand behind the material that you choose to use? Okay. That's what Gearbox Express was founded on. That's what they had done. And that's what we are doing today. And we're constantly looking for ways that we can improve what's already there, right? Things are going to fail. We're going to find what that failure is, and we're going to reverse that failure out and make it better, make it more robust, and we're going to warranty it. We're going to put a warranty on there that the OEMs aren't going to stand behind on their own stuff. We're going to be better than them, and we are better than them. And it takes time, and it takes some training, and it takes trust on the customer side for them to understand what we do and why we're doing it and what we offer. What's the value add to them, right? And so the value add is that you're not going to have that gearbox fail the same way that it failed before, right? The idea is that it doesn't fail at all, because we know what the failures are. They're the same every time, right? And we've made that better, and we've made the improvements there.
I love how you mentioned value add, and I think it's a great point in this conversation to maybe discuss the difference between the repair process and remanufacturing. I think it's something in the industry that needs to be emphasized a little bit more, is just talking about the difference between remanufacturing and repair. You've sort of already covered it, but I'd love for you to go a little bit more in depth about remanufacturing versus repair, and maybe even give an example, if you're willing, about what you guys have been able to do to maybe find some of these common failure modes and then reverse engineer them out.
Yeah. So, I mean, so the being brand agnostic here, or being model agnostic, we see all different types of gearboxes. We see different, from different wind turbines, and then from different gearbox manufacturers. We've seen everything, literally everything. We put our hands on it. Have we put it out in volume and, in a serial production? Not on all of them, but on a lot of them we do. We have, and we're currently supporting, the fleet now. The difference between repairing something and reverse engineering it, or remanufacturing it, is that when something fails, you can say, hey, this bearing failed, I'm going to replace that bearing. I'll take the bad bearing off, put the new bearing on, and send it back out. Okay, so it's repaired. Great. The remanufacturing process is, why did it fail? Did it fail because it's poor quality? Did it fail because it's got loose tolerances? Did it fail because it wasn't tested? It wasn't, truly proven? And did they not use sealants where they should have? Did they not use, seals where they should have? Did they not? There's several things that come into play, right? And so changing up the material that you use, are you using good, clean, the highest quality clean steel? Are you using, the best bearings that are out there? Have you had an engineering firm, your own, or, another engineering firm, review the numbers that you're looking at, the tolerances, the fits? Is there slop in the bearing? All of these things need to be asked. They need to be addressed when you're dealing with stuff like this. There's a lot of load that, that transfers, between the wind turbine blade and to make the generator spin. That gearbox is that. There's a lot of things that take place in there. Your geometry has to be right. Your math has to be on point to be able to stand behind a product. And that's what we do here. We're not just throwing a new bearing on, right? We're changing the type of material that you do have in your gearbox, and we have a cleaner, a better steel. The same with the bearings, the same with the lubrication system. We're looking at these things from a value add point of view. If I'm spending this much, this much money on something, I want to know that I have the best, and whoever that is going to stand behind it, right? That's what we do here. And there is a difference between the repair and the remanufacture.
One thing that you had mentioned there, John, that I jotted down is remanufacturing looks at the why. And I think that's a really important point to really reiterate here, is not just replacing the same bearing like for like, if the bearing is the failure, or it could be any other component within the gearbox or the main shafts that you guys actually do remanufacture. But I do want to drill into, again, if you're willing to share just your common process, maybe just a general overview of, hey, you've got this new 3 megawatt turbine that just came out. It's your first gearbox. How do you guys diagnose the why behind the first failure that you see within your facility?
Yeah. So, to be honest with you, on the, unless it's something that's obvious, or we have feedback, voice of customer that says, hey, I have a fleet of these, these gearboxes, this is the failure that we're seeing. Typically on the first go around, what we do is we have a team of disassembly technicians and engineers, mechanical engineers. And what we'll do is we'll piece by piece, right? We'll take this thing apart, and, every bolt, every fastener, every hard, lubrication line, every V-ring, every O-ring, every seal, what type of sealant, basically we take it all the way apart, and we list everything, we measure everything up. And then we start to develop this is the bill of material that is in this gearbox, right? So then you start looking at the grade of the bolts. Is it 8.8? Should it be 10.9, 12.9? You know, what kind of strength do we need here? Is it, you know, all of those things. And then you start looking at, when you get into the internals, you know, do you have gear teeth that have liberated, you know, that have broken off? What caused that? Was it a secondary failure? Where's the main fit? You know, all of these things get looked at, not only on a first-time disassembly, but in our disassembly process in general. Typically, you know, once it's something that we do serially, you know, the standard Moventus gearbox, right, an 1100.2. We know the material that's in there, but we still fine tooth comb everything. So when we start disassembling that, you know, we're looking for cracks, you know, in the ring gear register. We're looking for cracks in the ring gear, liberated teeth. We're looking for bearing debris that it may have fallen down and worked its way in the gear mesh. You know, we do that on every gearbox disassembly. But specific on first time stuff, if it's some like a 3 megawatt, I mean, we're fine tooth combing that thing. You know, we're getting, you know, precision measurements with the ferro. You know, our engineering department's going to fill up the hard drives with these super high res pictures. 9,000 of them we don't need. But you know, me being an operations guy, I'm just like, what do I have to do to get this thing rolling? But on their end, on the engineering side, on the front line guy, you know, they're looking at this thing front to back, you know, and doing it's a process, man. It's about a 2-week process for one gearbox to go to, you know, first shovel, last shingle, go all the way through it, make sure you have everything documented, pictures, you know, sketches, measurements, how things work, where did this come from, you know. And some of the gearboxes we have now, you have 2 planetary sections, right? So you have 2 carriers, you have 2 sets of planets, you know, you might have 2 suns, you know, or a version of that. So there's a lot that goes into it in trying to understand the mechanics behind it and timing and everything else.
That is crazy to me. 2 weeks to disassemble. I actually wrote this down again because it almost shocked me that you're looking at the bolts and the actual material grade of the bolts. This might not have a direct answer, but have you found, even in some cases, looking at things as small as the bolts, that those can actually be a cause of failure, or maybe a downstream cause of failure?
I wouldn't say, when you see some gearboxes come in that are like blown apart, you know, you have the housings cracked, obviously stuff that's inside that happened that caused that, right? But you start looking at like the structural, right? So the like structurally sound, is the housing structurally sound? If you've got bolts that are holding this thing together, right? If it's a split housing, right? So it's, you know, you have a bottom and a top and everything's in between there. And some of the top has bores and the bottom has bores, and some of those bores are split. So the bottom of the housing and the top of the housing share a bore. The bolts that are holding that housing together, if those things aren't sound, you know, you might as well throw bread ties on there at that point. Who cares at that point, right? I mean,
right.
For the guys in the field, when you're torquing and tensioning a tower, you're doing it based on the bolts, right? The base bolts in a tower, that you don't just throw a tensioner on there just for the hell of it. You have a spec, and the spec is based on what that bolt is, you know, can handle in clamping force for tensioning. And then for, you know, for torquing stuff down, you're basing the torque value off of the fastener. It's not on the machine. The machine will snap the head off if you tell it to, you know. So it all goes down to the material that you use. Is the material you use rated for what you're doing? And when when you're dealing with gearboxes, that there's a lot of, like I said, there's a lot of torque, there's a lot of force in that thing. If something simple as the bolt's not holding it down, there's a problem. And that could cause if that housing shifts just a little bit, you're talking 1,000th of an inch, you know, that's a lot to a bearing. That's a lot to a gear, you know, 1,000th of an inch. So, you know, I don't think you can feel it. Well, I can't feel it. My stupid calloused fingers, you know, I can't even what that feels like. But a gearbox is going to know exactly what that feels like, you know. And so if something's not doing its job in every location, there's going to be a problem there. You're going to have a failure.
But I love that you've done a deep dive even on bolts. It just proves out your attention to detail as an organization. And that's one of the key things that I wanted to emphasize here is just even down to the bolts, which to me would be something I'd probably overlook. But then again, I'm also not VP Ops at Gearbox Express, a cutting edge organization in the wind space. And we've talked a lot about Gearbox Express. It's in the name. John, I'd like to talk about the main shaft remanufacturing. This is something where if you were to rank from 1 to 10, my level of knowledge on it, it's probably a 0.5 or lower. So could you maybe just give a quick overview of the main shaft, its role in maybe the turbine's production of energy, and then also how in the heck are you guys actually remanufacturing these things, because they are massive, heavy components?
Yeah. So similar to a gearbox, right? The main shaft, there's three components, right? You have the bearing housing, and then the shaft itself. Some bearing housings come split, so you have like a top shell and a bottom shell, and then some you just basically have a cover, like a labyrinth cover, and then you have the actual housing that sits on top of that around the bearing, and then you have another cover, that bolts on top or on the on the downwind side. We take that, same process, right? You get the main shaft in, whether it's inside of the gearbox's carrier, we'll pull that out. We'll inspect the mating end, the part that goes inside of the carrier. We inspect that, we measure it, make sure that it's within the tolerance. If it's not, we have measurements for that, and then we send it to a machine shop, and they put that back within spec. If it can be, right? If it's not, you have to scrap it. You have to get rid of it. And then the same thing for the journal, where the bearing rides on. Once you take everything off in the disassembly, you measure up that journal area, make sure that it's worthy of having a bearing roll on it, and be able to transfer that load from the blade spinning. That shaft is what's transferring that force into the gearbox. So you have to make sure all that stuff's mechanically sound. Same process, looking at the measurements, is it within specification? The failure that it did have, did it damage any of those surfaces? Is there something warped? I've never seen a main shaft, warped, nothing for like a megawatt or higher class, but, who's to say it can't, right? I mean, you have to check all that stuff. So then, the housing comes off, you measure the housing, you measure the bore of the housing, you measure the covers, make sure that everything's flat. Mating surfaces are flat. If they're not, you make them flat. There's techniques to do that. Same with the bearing selection. Are you using the best quality bearing for the job? The bolt kit. Do you have the right bolt kit that you need, for what you're doing? And then, I think the biggest thing about the main shafts, and that's something that we're learning, every customer does things differently, right? So if you're at, site A that's in California, but you also own site B that's in New York, those guys might be measuring something differently. They might have taken a sensor and put it somewhere on the housing to measure, the PT100, right, to measure the temperature of the bearing, or they might want to measure the temperature of the grease. I don't know, right? Not everybody does the same thing. So when we see stuff come in, we see it come in from all over. We see it, from Canada, from the U.S., from the middle of America to the East Coast to the West Coast, all down south, wherever they come in, they all look differently, right? So one of the things that we're looking at is what is this site, are they measuring temperature for a reason? Are they measuring vibration over here for a reason? Or is it geographical location that's driving this? Is it just this one tower that they put some kind of, CBM or, condition-based monitoring on that they're looking at? Like, what are they looking at? We don't know that backstory, right? So a lot of it's like forensics work for us. We're trying to figure out, why did this one come in different than that one? And have we ever seen anyone come in like this one? Let's take a note. Let's write it down, right? And so that's the fun part in our process to figure out, why did they put a sensor there? The OEM didn't put a sensor there, so why did they do that? And then if we see that as a repeat, we're like, okay, maybe we need to start looking into this. Did they do that because that was the failure mode? Whatever they're measuring is what led to that bearing failure, or to that, to that main shaft, the main shaft's demise. We don't know. So all of those things get taken into consideration during the disassembly phase, during the reverse engineering phase. And then on the assembly side, when we go to put that stuff back together, we make sure we address all of those things that we noticed in the disassembly, right? So we're writing those processes as a living document. So if it's a GE 1.5 SLE main shaft, we're going to make sure that we address everything as we saw it, come in. Like, this main shaft came in, it had this hole on it, is the cover clocked and timed in the right position? So when we go to install it back, because it gets disassembled, it gets cleaned up, it gets sent out for machining, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then it gets reassembled. Is it going to look the exact same as it goes out? Because when I send that main shaft back out, the way that our core process works, that main shaft can be going to any SLE site, assuming, that you don't own it right away, that you're not giving it to me to remanufacture it and send it back to you, right? You might give it to me as a core. You said, hey, I have a bad one, I give you another one, and now I own this one to do my thing with it, and then I can sell it to somebody else. I need to make sure that whatever your site has, the way that I send it out can accept that. So you guys aren't up tower like, I got to put this Zerk fitting here and there's no place to put it. Where do I drill? Don't drill. Please don't drill. Please call. It could be sinking a drill bit right into a bearing or something. But, we try to address all of those things, because not everything that we see is the same. It could be the same model. It could be the same type, and it's different. Somebody's made, a fix somewhere along the way. And I think we've gotten really, really, really good at catching that type of stuff, right? We have a book that we say it should look like this. So if it comes in different, make a note and figure out what was there.
That is so cool. I love how you talk about learning. It's almost like you're an investigative journalist, or maybe like an undercover cop, right? Having to put all these pieces together, I guess pun intended here, to try and identify failure modes and how can you guys improve your processes. I guess for you personally, John, being the undercover investigator that you are as the VP of Ops, what lessons have you personally learned over your tenure at Gearbox Express in looking at these small finite details? You'd mentioned condition monitoring, for instance, and maybe that's a reason why somebody had actually installed that on their gearbox, and you're trying to find out why. Were there any lessons that you've learned over the years by extracting those tiny pieces of information and putting them all together that you could potentially share?
Yeah, I've learned that. I think in my time as being on a wind farm, as an operator, and then moving on this side of the house where you're more focused on one component of a turbine. I think the biggest thing that I found is you have to maintain these things often, right? Most of the time when we see stuff, we see failures because a material breakdown. But I think that with a proper maintenance and preventative maintenance and care, and just making sure that everything's working the way that it should be working when you guys are doing your 6-month maintenances, or if you do it by hour, whatever your maintenance program is, make sure that you're just addressing the little things, right? Is the lube pump on and working? If it's if it's 2-speed, does the low speed and the high speed work? What triggers those to turn on and off, right? The sensors, are the temp sensors actually working to tell this thing to kick on, to kick off? Is the oil too hot? Do the heaters work? It's little things like that don't require a whole lot of time or effort, but can save your butt. Most of the stuff that we've seen here that I've learned myself is just take the extra step to take a look at it and make sure it's working, because the difference between catching something right before it fails and catching something or not catching, so basically having catastrophic failure, is huge. The cost is enormous. The cost savings to do it preventatively are almost immeasurable, right? If you say, hey, this thing is starting to fail, I need to do something now. It is a lot better for you financially to do that, to make that decision as an owner, because the cost to repair that is a lot less than if that thing catastrophically fails. You crack the case, the housing cracks, you have gears that are damaged beyond repair. God forbid that thing shook the failure off into something else. We've seen things fail, a gearbox fail and cause damage in the generator. There's so many things that can happen, right? You have oil all over the place. Everyone knows that pain, right? Just having oil run down the tower. I think to answer your question, it's take care of the stuff, preventative maintenance, making sure that everything is working the way it's supposed to be working. And if you don't know what those things are, just ask us. Everyone has my cell phone number. You can text me, you can call me, my email address, send me a LinkedIn. I'll answer your question. You can talk to anybody who knows me. I'm long-winded. I know that. I get it. But I'll get you an answer. I'll get you an answer whenever you have the question. I'll get you an answer. And if I don't know, I'll put somebody onto you that does know, right? But yeah, preventative maintenance, man. Take care of your stuff and understand what you're looking at. Anybody can walk past the gearbox, but do they know what they're looking at, right? So when I say preventative maintenance, you might send a technician up tower outside of a 1 day of training that he got when he was at whatever school he went to, or he might have been on the maintenance. He might have been on the crew that was cleaning towers for 2 years. He doesn't know what he's looking at, right? That's the reality. So making sure that the guys understand what they're looking at, and then maybe not know how to fix it, but know how to identify it and let someone else know so that they can address those things. I think that's the main point that I learned was preventative maintenance. It goes a long way.
That's a great answer. And one of my questions I wanted to ask was about preventative maintenances and actually, common failure modes. You see, how are they preventable? And you've answered that. It sounds like being more thorough in the way that you perform maintenances. You talked about temperature readings, your pumps, all these sort of things that are very, they're smaller components when you compare the dollar amount to maybe like a gearbox from an oil condition monitoring system, but it's still very important. And I think that's something that we should really stress. And I'm curious, John, before we hop into the rapid fire round and wrap up this podcast, I guess a couple things. You'd mentioned catastrophic failures almost being immeasurable in the amount of dollars that it can cost a company if a gearbox does catastrophically fail.
Yeah.
Were you to put a dollar amount on it, is there any estimate that you're willing to give in that regard? And then also part two would be, if you're doing your preventative maintenance as well, and you're being very thorough in those maintenances, what sort of life, extension can you expect from that gearbox, or at least the savings that you can drive out of that?
Yeah. So, to give a dollar amount, that's hard, right? Because there's different, I had to sit here and go through every model that we, from
right.
Shy to a Vestas to GE, Nordic, whatever, right? I'll put it to you like this, to anybody listening that's in the financial world, right? You can put brackets around preventative maintenance, right? You can say, you can work with us, we can put together an MSA so you have pricing known, right? So for the asset managers out there, the FP&A guys, or the ops guys that have that responsibility, Gearbox Express, we work with customers under an MSA. We also do, single transactions, but the MSA is really where you can control your cost as an operator and as an asset manager. We could put brackets around preventative maintenance. If you have a budget that says, I can do 4 gearboxes this year, we can help you put brackets around that and say that gearbox needs to be changed out this year, or that bracket goes away. Right. The starting point is now here. The end is, I don't know. Right. And included in that MSA can be crane, turnkey, basically where you have something that goes wrong, you call us, we can have everything there to include the labor, the crane, all of that. We offer that service. We have great partners in the industry that help us, achieve those things. But, preventative maintenance allows you to put brackets around cost. When you don't look at something as something catastrophically fails, when I said immeasurable, it can be completely immeasurable. You can go from, having to replace a generator, the main shaft, the blade bearings, something can happen there. You don't know, right? I mean, this thing can go haywire, right? And I don't want to be doom and gloom, but that's the reality. That is the reality of what we see and what's happening in our industry. So yeah, man, better, good, get a good grip on it, understand what your costs are, understand what your risks are, and make your decisions based off of that. There's a lot of guys out there, especially down in Texas, that have the low power prices, right? So all of your decisions, unfortunately, have to be driven by finance. What do you have available to spend? If you work with us, you can put brackets around stuff and say, I can afford to do this, or here's my problems, help me with a solution. That's what we do. That's what we're good at. We're good at thinking outside of the box and delivering solutions, for people like that, right? So if you're working with a limited amount of funds, we can help put brackets around your issues, and then we can start driving solutions that fit your needs. It might not fit everybody. It might not be the most ideal, but we can help you get out of those situations. We can be there for you when you need us to be there for you, right? We're the experts there. We're not the experts at running your site, but we are the experts in drivetrains. So
that's fantastic. I love that answer. And I didn't realize too.
You're fired up. You're getting me fired up.
Oh, we're both fired up, man. We might have to do part 2 because we're almost an hour in, and I certainly don't want to take up too much of your time. But you mentioned one more thing, and then we'll go into the rapid fire and again wrap it up. But you mentioned turnkey. Does that mean that you're also helping to coordinate cranes and a lot of the on-site swapping of gearboxes, for instance?
Yeah. So basically, how our turnkey service works is no different than what you guys would be doing on site, except for we're handling all of those logistics, right? So if you call and say, I want a full drivetrain in my world, right? Full drivetrain. I want a main shaft, then I want a generator, right? Typically what will happen is Gearbox Express, we already have that stuff here in inventory. So you call me and say, John, my SLE just failed. I need a gearbox and a main shaft. And I say, you want me to do it or do you want to do it? And you say, I want you to do it, man. I need help. It's Saturday. I want to drink beer. I want this thing to be here on Monday morning. I say, Roger that. We go, I pull the gearbox and main shaft. We made it here. Tighten the shrink disc and everything here. If that's what the job calls for. We throw it on a truck. We get it headed your way. We contact the crane company, either a crane company that we partner with already, or we find a crane company in your area, along with the labor. And then basically we set up at your tower, and you give us the keys to the tower, and we get it back online for you. Almost 100% of the time, I say almost 100%, so 99.9% of the time, if you're calling us for a gearbox or a main shaft, I can beat your crane there. I don't even care if you're in Merkel, Texas, and the crane company is in Sweetwater, Texas. My truck from Wisconsin can beat your crane to the site. So availability is never an issue. It's never been an issue, right? 2 days from everywhere for a geographical oddity.
I love that. And primarily as a parts distributor at Kurz, when you say availability, everyone's ears will perk up because that is such a critical component of the industry continuously moving forward. John, I want to get into the rapid fire round. And it's a perfect segue. You mentioned Merkel, Texas. I actually want to know a little bit more about this Merkel music hall that you were a part of, and maybe talk a little bit more about your passions and time down there in Texas.
Yeah, man. Merkel City Music Hall. I'm in live music. I, play and sing just kind of as a pastime. And my wife and I were like, we want to do something. We want to start something. Maybe get people out of the house.
Yeah.
Instead of doing it in my garage. So we basically put together a business plan, and we started the Merkel City Music Hall. It was a live music venue. in Merkel. If you're not familiar with the area, it's kind of right in the middle of all the wind there in West Texas. And yeah, man, we had live music pretty much every night. If it was a band, Saturday, Sunday, we had karaoke. We did, poker runs to raise money for people. We helped some of the guys that are in wind. There was a guy, a site manager out in Snyder, Texas. He lost his wife in an automobile accident. That was like on a Thursday. I had a band come through on Friday, and we raised like 12 grand for the guy that night. We were able to give it to him. It's just, it's stuff like that. That's what we did. That was our passion. That's still my passion. When we made the decision to move up here to Wisconsin, we sold the music hall, but I'm still involved with stuff like that. It's still near and dear to my heart, live music, and then obviously giving back, whatever I can give, I will, and I do.
Man, that is awesome. And of course, I have to ask the question. You'd mentioned a pastime of yours, playing guitar, maybe singing. Karaoke night. Okay, you're the last one on the stage. They say, hey, look, you got to shut this place down. Okay,
Yeah.
rock the crowd. What song are you singing?
Oh, we're rocking the crowd?
Oh, yeah.
Huh. Rocking the crowd. Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm going to do a lot of booze for this one, but Piano Man. That's my jam.
Yeah.
That's my jam. A lot of people want me to do like Skinner or some, Stapleton, stuff like that. Billy Joel, baby.
I love it. I love it. So basically you're committing to the next Kurz Wind podcast. You'll open with that song, right? As the introduction.
Oh man. We'll figure something out.
We might have to do that one late on a Friday night.
Yeah. I might need some encouragement. But yeah, we're good. We'll figure something out.
100%. Hey, so next question for you. I want to talk about role models, because you do have a very unique background, and obviously your passion exudes through this entire conversation. Do you have any one that you would consider your role model, or multiple people that you consider role models?
Yeah, I mean, I think, role models, mentors, stuff like that. That's a thing that's like kind of personal. It's not really driven by any industry or skill set, I guess you can say, because what I look for in my role, I'll flat out say it, my role model, my mother, she's my role model. She's had so many life experiences, so many things that she's encountered along the way, being a woman, working, working at, in industry, the different things that she's lived through her life. There's so much there to gather, just, you could sit there forever and still learn, continue to learn from her. And I look up to her, man. Anytime I have a question about anything, she doesn't know the first thing about wind, right? She knows what they look like. She's seen them, right? But just in life in general, I can say, hey, I'm struggling to understand this concept, or I'm struggling to understand this relationship with this person, or I had a bad day, this happened, and not just because it's my mom. She wasn't really a coddler, like, oh, it's going to be okay. She's like, no, you have to figure this out. And this is the approach. This is what happened to me. You can take it or leave it, right? And so I look up to that, man. That, I've modeled a lot of who I am is a reflection of her. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, right? But that's my role model, man. My mom. I know a lot of guys have, they'll say Jack Welch or, whoever, right? And that's fine. And that's awesome, man. Go out and look after somebody and kind of emulate and gain experience through them. But in my life, it's been my mom, man. I can't ask her about a role model, man. She sets the standard, and the standard's always high, and I'm always underneath it, and I'm trying to hit it. I try to hit it every day. Wake up early, earn the sunrise, and try to be a better person every day.
I love that. And this clip might have to be sent to her. Maybe we could break it off and send it to you to give her a little shout out, just personally.
I like that.
I think that's an awesome answer. That's probably the first time that I've had an answer where somebody said their mother. So that's really unique too. And I love that. I want to talk a little bit more about, you just said earn the sunrise, which prompts me to think about new guys getting into and gals getting into the wind industry. A lot of people who listen to this podcast are people either going to high school, college, they're going to some sort of technical institute, trying to get into wind and renewables. Do you have advice for them, whether it's beating the sunrise or earning the day, whatever it might be, for them to set themselves up to be successful in this young industry?
Yeah. Similar to my situation when I came up in wind, basically be open to everything. You never know, you never know what life's going to present to you. You never know what this industry is going to present to you. A lot of guys don't understand that there's so many functions within wind. Logistics guys, you got the financial guys, your financial planners and analysts. You have your data analysts. You have asset managers. You have site guys. You have specific site guys. The major component guys. That's what they really focus in on. There's so many roles out there. Purchasing. Be a sponge. When you get the opportunity to be on a wind farm, you might come in contact with 4 or 5 different completely different sets of skills, and they're all coming together to help that wind farm run. From the purchasing guy to the asset manager to the site guy to the safety guy to the technician, you come in contact, or you have the potential to come in contact with these people every day. Be a sponge, learn from them. You might find yourself sitting in a chair one day trying to figure out financing, for a new wind farm, or on the development side, building a new wind farm, be a sponge. Keep your options open. Just because you went to, a tech school or a 4-year school or a 2-year, whatever it is, or you just walked on right out of high school, you walked into a wind farm, be prepared to learn something that you did not know existed, that you did not know existed on a wind farm. I think I was doing something somewhere. I think it was in South Dakota. We were working with a wind farm up in South Dakota, and I learned that they had a weather guy on staff. I was like, what? They're like, well, your fuel's in. So we kind of need to know when that's going to happen. And I'm like, oh my God, why didn't you even think about it? This guy's a meteorologist working at a wind farm. I would have never crossed my mind as it being an option to be in the renewable space in wind and have a meteorologist working next to me. It never crossed my mind. And, so there you go. If you're a new guy, or if you're teetering on what you want to do in wind, maybe climbing's not for you every day. There are so many other options out there to be in this industry and support this industry. Just be a sponge, man. Don't close off thinking, hey, I'm a technician, that's what I got to do. There is so much out there within the industry. So, keep your ear to the ground, keep your eyes open, be a sponge, and be willing to, receive any information people give you. It's going to be good for you. Regardless if you'll never use it, at least you have that understanding of what they do and how they tie into the process.
Be a sponge. I love that. And anytime somebody walks into your office, John, they'll see a lot of books on your shelves. I don't know if you still have a lot of books on your desk, but it's one of the most striking aspects of your office. So you're obviously a well-read guy. What book or books would you recommend to somebody either in the industry, wanting to be in the industry, or just a general renewable enthusiast that might be listening to this podcast? What book or books would you recommend they read?
So actually there's 3 that have been on my desk for a little while right now. I'm going to grab them real quick.
Please do.
So this one here, this is the 1 Minute Manager Meets the Monkey. So if you're a new manager, right, of people, or you've been in management a while and you're starting to, you feel like you have an issue taking on too much that might not be your responsibility, dude, this is it. This book right here is awesome to reference. You don't have to read the whole thing, but I mean, this is an airplane read. You can get this done in one flight, right? the red text on the top there, just a little, it says, don't take on the problem if the problem isn't yours. That monkey doesn't belong to you, right? That's the basic, of this book. That's a good one for management. Another one, not just for management, but for employees. This is one of the things we put into our employees reviews last year, was this book. I know it's kind of rah-rah or whatever. Not everybody, it's not everyone's cup of tea. I understand that. This is something that our leadership team read here and that we made available for the audio book for our employees. So when they're on the floor, or when they're at home, whatever, they can listen to it, or they can come and grab this book from me whenever they want to. But it's Extreme Ownership. It's by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. This is a great one, for just basic leadership, but also just in general understanding. You might not be a leader per se in your company. You might be an employee. You don't have any direct reports. That's fine. Who cares? You could still be a leader, but the main thing is understanding the leadership concept, understanding where your leadership might be coming from. Or if you have a difficult leader that you're working with, how to deal with them. This stuff's in this book here. I think it's important. These things have been on my desk. Literally, I flip through them at least once a day. It's kind of like a religion. And then this one is Lean Six Sigma for Service. So, I got some notes in here. This was given to me by a guy, Jeff Gibbons. I worked with him at AES, and then he went on to EDF, and then he went back to AES. He works with Fluence, right? So they're not in wind per se, but he's the vice president of operations for their battery storage, right? So they rival like Tesla. Pretty cool stuff.
Cutting edge.
But he gave me this book when we worked together when I worked for AES in Palm Springs, California. He gave me this book and I referenced it. I did not know. I thought this was seriously going to go somewhere on the bottom somewhere. I look at this thing more than I think I should, or more than I thought I would, rather. I should look at it a whole lot more probably. But those three books right there, those are on my desk currently. I have a Foot Locker underneath that desk over there. It's got a bunch more books from grad school that I do look at. I reference, when I get into an issue with, trying to understand certain processes in business. But those three books, they're on my desk. You've been to our shop. The 33 people that work here know that they can come in here and get these books at any time. They can come get them from me. I've had a couple guys come pick them up and flip through them or ask me, what's a good chapter to read or whatever. And they're always in here. They're here for everyone to grab, man. So it's a public library.
I love that. And after this call, John, I want to get the list of those books. I try to jot them down quickly, but my handwriting is brutal when I'm writing quickly. So we'll put those in the show notes. Yeah, I really should, honestly. I've got Word doc pulled up here, but didn't think of it. And just as a little side note, I saw on your LinkedIn, you're a green belt in Sigma 6. Yep. So when I did some digging, I thought, oh, this guy's a jiu-jitsu fan, but little did I know Sigma 6 is completely different from jiu-jitsu. But anyways, I think that's really cool that you're willing to share those books, and I'm learning honestly from you, and I definitely want to pick up all three of those myself. The Extreme Ownership I actually have on my in my library here, and I read it quite some time ago. I've been a big fan of the Jocko podcast, him and Echo Charles. If you listen to that, it's actually one of the inspirations for me to start this podcast here. Yeah. So I love that you referenced that. I definitely want to make it a priority to reread. Now, John, last question might be the most difficult question of the day. You're in Wisconsin. The Green Bay Packers looked pretty dang sharp this past weekend. If you were a betting man, who's winning the Super Bowl?
Oh man,
stumped you.
Yeah, I'm a Tampa Bay guy. I really actually I had a hard hat here with Tampa Bay on it. We've had our issues since 2002. We draft kickers in the first round, stuff like that. But, yeah, I think Green Bay's got too many holes on the offensive line. Like at the at the championship level, I don't think they'll be able to pull it off. Bakhtiari was a stud as a left tackle. He's not going to be there to protect Aaron, which I think is going to be a problem with whoever they face, going forward. it sucks, man. I got to default to Kansas City. I don't see them losing anytime soon. I really don't, man. Andy Reid's a stud play caller. I don't know if you know who their quarterback is, but his name's Patrick Mahomes, and he's pretty good.
He's all right.
He's pretty good. And they got some they have some of the fastest guys I think I've ever seen on the gridiron, and they all do their thing, and they do it really well. So yeah, I don't see Kansas City losing anytime soon. I hope I'm wrong, because Green Bay needs to lose and Tampa Bay needs to win, and then we need to go to the promised land once again. I don't think, in reality, I don't think that's going to happen. But yeah, man, I see Kansas City being hard to beat. I hate saying that. God, I hate saying that, but I think that's what's going to end up happening.
You got to remember who the Bucs quarterback is, TB12. Might I remind you, the Atlanta Falcons, 28-3 in the fourth quarter. When you've got TB12 quarterbacking the ball for you, coming down the stretch, anything can happen. So there's a lot of hope. And actually, the initial teaser lines, if, hypothetically we were betting men, I think it was -3 for Green Bay. So Vegas is calling this a closer game than a lot of people would anticipate. So hopefully the Bucs can pull this out.
The only thing that I fear is that weather. The weather is I don't know how the guys down in Tampa Bay are going to play. I know that they have there's two players that can deal with that weather. And it's Tom Brady and Gronk. Both played in crap weather up in New England. But I don't know, man. It's you never know, man. Anytime anybody goes into Green Bay, it's like they lose their playbook. They don't know what's going on. They're too side. What? Okay, whatever. Now we're playing by Aaron Rodgers, fake play call rules and all that crap. It doesn't hurt that Green Bay always has like 12 or 13 players, right? So they have the 11 that are wearing football uniforms, and then they have at least 2 that have black and white on their. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
They seem to always be in the way and in favor of Green Bay.
I've seen it. I was up at Green Bay to watch the Raiders get walloped by the Packers. And if you watch the game back, it was
that game.
Were you really? Yeah.
Yeah.
No way.
I swear to God, I got pictures somewhere. I'll have to send them to you.
I'll send them to you. I actually went with our buddies over at Invenergy. We went and saw the game from a box. It was great. It was a beautiful day for the time of year in Green Bay. It was awesome to watch. But not great to watch the Raiders get walloped, I said. But I think Aaron Jones had like 3 or 4 tutties. Aaron Rodgers threw for 5 or 6 touchdowns. I mean, it was a complete offensive showcase.
I think things went downhill. Derek Hill got like intercepted. Derek Carr intercepted, and then it was just downhill from there. It was fun. We were sitting on the Green Bay side, but it was fun looking over at John Gruden, across the field, just getting fired up. Charles Woodson was walking in front of us. That was pretty cool. And then Kuhn, he was an old fullback for Green Bay. He was down on the field there. Yeah, it was awesome, man. That was a sweet game. That was the first time I'd ever been to Lambeau. So my son, we kind of like the Raiders during another conference. I'm a Tampa Bay guy, but, John Gruden, he took us there in 2002. So against his Raiders, oddly enough. So, yeah, that was a good game, man. Man, that's awesome. Yeah, I have to show you pictures. The best part about that game is that I've always seen Raiders games on TV, but the black hole was there.
Yes.
The black hole there. Seeing them in person, dude, they are committed. They are freaking committed. With the spikes and the full body paint and the thing, I mean, I was like, these guys here, they're legit, man. They travel hard. That's a solid fan base.
It's a solid fan base, similar to the Bucs fan base. Honestly, we're both patiently waiting for our time to come, so we can suffer together. And John, last thing, and then I want to definitely plug you guys, you personally, Gearbox Express, how they find you. But it sounds like our next business meeting, and hopefully some of the Kurz leadership is listening in today. It sounds like our next meeting should be at Lambeau Field, watching a Packer game. What do you think about that?
I'm not going to argue with you. at the end of the day, football's football, man. There's two sports. It's football and spring football. So I'll sign up for either.
I love it. John, I appreciate the time today. For people who want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to contact you?
Yeah, so you can go to our website, gearboxexpress.com. You can find us on LinkedIn, on Twitter. Me personally, it's john.mckay, so john.mckay at gearboxexpress.com. And yeah, you can drop me an email. If you already have my cell phone number, call me, text me. If you want it, send an email, and then I'll vet you.
Perfect.
Yeah. I'm not giving that thing out to just anybody, man. You get all kinds of weird stuff.
I believe it. According to the 7 missed calls that I've had during this podcast, they're all about my extended warranty being over. So we'll make sure we protect your phone number, John. I'll definitely put all the contact info in the show notes below the show on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, so you can find this episode everywhere. John, once again, man, this has been a super enjoyable conversation. Your passion exudes through the podcast here and the conversation that we've had. I just really appreciate you coming on it, and best of luck with you here in 2021 with your business.
Yeah, thanks, Dan, man. I appreciate it, and good luck to you guys in 2021 with the podcast and with Kurz. And I wish you guys nothing but the best, man. And everybody out there listening, man, if you're not in Wind and you're thinking about getting in Wind, it's an awesome industry, man. It's really taking care of me and my family. And if you're in Wind, man, keep chugging, keep them spinning, keep them ginning.
Keep them spinning, keep them ginning. And with that, John, we're going to sign off. Go TB12, go Bucks.
Go Bucks, man. Thanks.